Autistic people are unhappy. It's not that we're miserable, cheerless people, nor is it a symptom or trait. We're unhappy with being pushed to the fringes of society. Most of us have been subjected to numerous indignities, disadvantages and cruelties in our lives which have made our feelings decidedly personal. When we finally meet others who are the same as us and who have similar experiences, we realise that injustices we thought of as being unique to us are widespread. We hear carbon copy tales from other autists of all ages and from all over the world. What makes this so bizarre is that much of what can make us feel oppressed happens without people even knowing that we're autistic. And in many cases, we didn't even know ourselves at the time. I'm often asked why I make these films and why there are so many other advocates and campaigners trying to educate people about autistic life. They wonder why we feel so left out or what we think is unfair. They don't see what's so different about life as an autist compared to their own lives. They want me to explain just what's so hard about being autistic in a neurotypical world. So, let's ask the question. What's so hard about being autistic? When people try to think of ways in which autistic people might have a hard time, kids in school are usually their first thought. Kids can be cruel and they can imagine them shouting, "You're so autistic," as an insult. But it goes way beyond that. Adults do it too. Not just thugs and bullies, but well-educated people, cultured people and professionals of all classes. Journalists are guilty of criticising unpopular politicians and public figures for behaving autistically or making autistic decisions. The perception that being autistic makes one less of a person is endemic in Western culture, and there's no doubt it has an impact on all autists, with or without a diagnosis. I mentioned in the introduction that autistic people share experiences of discrimination even before we get a diagnosis. How does that come about? Autistic brains are built differently. Among other things, it's common for us to have senses that are more or less receptive than the average. It can mean we're sensitive to things others can't perceive, but we may also miss some things that other people are aware of. There's more about autistic senses in the video linked above. When we're kids, our peers call us names when we don't notice things they do. Teachers often back up that derision by doubting our sincerity when we protest. The common assumption that we all sense the world in the same way unless we're diagnosed as, say, deaf or blind, creates barriers that can shape a child's life forever. No amount of pointing out what we missed can make it any more apparent. Our senses simply don't always pick up the same things as others. What about the times we sense things others are unaware of? We get accused of imagining things. They call us fantasists or daydreamers at best, or delusional liars at worst. If our sense of taste and texture limits our diets, we're told we're picky eaters. If we can't wear the clothes we're asked to, or sit with the others on the scratchy carpet, we're making a fuss over nothing. This becomes even more pronounced in adulthood for those of us who sense things others are oblivious to. Like those who can hear the hum of electrical resistance, or the many different varieties of synesthesia. We're told we're either making it up or dismissed as freaks. How about communication? Communication is listed as a deficit on pretty much every description of autism you'll find, but is it that simple? Autistic communication is different to neurotypical communication, especially in the West. But how much it differs varies across cultures. A culture that favours direct, information-rich expression will be far less alienating to an autist than one which relies on hints, shared understandings and reading between the lines. You know that cliché of the English-speaking tourist trying to order in a restaurant? They don't know the language, and when the waiter doesn't understand their order, they just repeat themselves in English ever louder and more slowly, whilst the waiter is none the wiser. Being an autist in a neurotypical world can feel like being that waiter. Almost everyone we deal with expects us to understand their language, and they repeat themselves or shout when we don't understand. That is, if they don't start talking to us as if we were young children or just give up altogether. We're treated as ignorant for not understanding the hints people think are implicit behind what they say, or naive for taking what they say at face value. We're told it's our fault for not understanding the hidden message behind words that actually say something completely different. Our own communication style, which is often direct, honest and thorough, gets dismissed as boring or even aggressive. We find ourselves in conflict because people have inserted their own hidden intent behind our words, which was never there. They incorrectly read meaning into our words because they're used to other people doing it. Honest compliments are received as sarcasm, and pleas for help are ignored because we use logic instead of emotional triggers. If you live your life being constantly misunderstood, sometimes with unpleasant, even threatening consequences, you might start to feel some resentment towards those who don't make the effort to understand your communication style. Let's look back to school again. I've lost count of the times I've been told of childhood bullying, not only from pupils but by teachers too. There are many different learning styles, the optimum ways in which we absorb information or new skills, but few are accommodated. Rote learning is usually the only method available. Information is delivered to us in a classroom or read from a book, then regurgitated in the form of written work. Autistic people aren't the only ones who don't learn well under such conditions, but there's very little variation in the style of teaching in schools, or in later life, in the courses our employers send us on. I know autistic people with excellent qualifications who've done very well in their chosen disciplines. Even they often describe the process of gaining those qualifications as being a struggle within a system that made their learning more difficult than it should be. Sadly, they are way outnumbered by those who have the intelligence and the skill to have done the same, but were terrorised out of education before their time by a system which denies us the opportunity to learn properly. The frustration of intelligent, talented people being stuck in jobs that are way below their ability, watching less capable but more popular or unscrupulous people leapfrog over them, is heartbreaking. Even more so is that of those who cannot get any work because throughout life they've been told that their face doesn't fit. Many's the time I've met an autist who has struggled through an antagonistic education system to become very well qualified, sometimes in multiple disciplines, who still can't hold down a job because they're judged as a poor fit. Autists regularly get fired for not being a team player because we do our best work alone, or we find it almost impossible to work in communal environments. Interviews are rigged against us if we're uncomfortable with eye contact. Our answers to silly questions like, "Tell me about yourself," are honest rather than cherry-picked, or our unconscious stims are misinterpreted as fidgeting because of nerves or dishonesty. If I were to list all the disadvantages autistic people have to live with even without a diagnosis, this film could last for hours. The way our society treats people who sense, think and express themselves differently to the socially accepted cultural norm is nothing short of appalling. Society shuns anyone who doesn't fit its narrow view of normal. The knee-jerk reaction is to marginalise, ostracise and often victimise anyone that doesn't fit the mould. Ableism, as it has come to be known, extends well beyond those with a known or visible disability. It's a prejudice against anyone who doesn't live up to others' expectations. When we do get our diagnosis, we encounter another layer of ableism on top of that we've already endured as undiagnosed but different. It's natural on being formally identified as autistic to try to find out more about our new diagnosis. We seek out websites and books about autism. We watch videos like this one, all to learn about what defines autism and to seek common ground with others. What we find can be soul-destroying. Almost everything we read, even from the leading charities, is a never-ending litany of doom and gloom. We read about deficits, failures and incompleteness. We're led to believe that our differences are not just an aspect of the diversity of the human race, we're suffering from symptoms of a developmental disorder. Rather than complete adults, we're supposedly unfinished, immature people who can't cope with the rigours of life. Then we encounter the societal difficulties of being autistic. We see the way autism is portrayed in the media. We learn of people much like ourselves who are imprisoned in various institutions for doing nothing more than not fitting in. We discover that being honest about being autistic on job applications is a bad idea because we don't get interviewed anymore. If we are already working, we find our promotion prospects dry up and our colleagues and bosses start patronising us. We tell our doctors that we're autistic and realise they've started treating us like hypochondriacs, or become reluctant to prescribe us medicines for fear we'll abuse them. If we should encounter law enforcement, we learn that telling them we're autistic may affect our fate at their hands. Instead of being taken seriously as the victim, our word is doubted and our reliability called into question. We may even find ourselves going in as a victim and ending up as a suspect. All around us we see the stigma attached to the word autistic. People correct us when we describe ourselves as autistic because you're more than that. They think it's a kindness to call us people with autism because that puts the person first, as if being an autistic person is a shameful erosion of our humanity. We go online and see videos of autistic children having meltdowns because their needs are unmet, whilst their parents play to the camera for our pity or our money. There's celebrities imploring people not to vaccinate their kids because of discredited links with autism. Articles in the press talk of hopes for a cure, and almost always it's the parents and the scientists they interview, never autistic people themselves. There's banter all around us that uses autistic as an insult or as a way of undermining authority figures. We open the newspaper and see journalists expressing sympathy for parents who've murdered their autistic children as if it's an act of mercy, and stories of autistic people being arrested or even killed for allowing their distress to show in public. It's enough for some people to wish they'd never got their diagnosis and remained in the dark. Again, I could go on and on about the ways in which autistic people are pitied, ridiculed or discriminated against, but I think I've said enough. If you haven't understood why autistic people are resentful over the way we're treated in this world by now, I fear you may never do so. When you see the world through autistic eyes, it's impossible to accept that society is fair to us. It needs to change, and sitting back accepting it as normal or demanding that we adapt will do nothing to make that happen. We cannot do it alone. There is another way though. Some of us are lucky enough to meet other autistic people and see potential beyond the indifference and antagonism we encounter daily. We get to share our observations on the world, learn of our common experiences and the many reasonable, human-centred explanations of our differences. We learn of our place in a world of endless variety and thought where no two people are exactly the same, and we talk of ways to function and to fight back in a world which does its very best to ignore or eliminate us. Together we could build a better world. A neurodiverse world where people of all neurotypes, including neurotypical people, all understand and respect each other's differences. A place where we allow people to maximise their potential for the benefit of us all, rather than box everyone in with a narrow list of expectations we call normal. If you, viewer, are neurotypical, think about what this world puts neurodivergent people through. Not just those of us that are autistic, but everyone whose mind works differently. Ask yourself if it's right, whether there is any justice in treating people in the ways I've described in this film. Think about what you would go through if your bubble of normality were to burst and you discovered you were one of us. Would you think it unfair? Would you be angry? Would you want to fight back? I think you would. Thank you for watching. Over here on the left, you can subscribe to the channel to learn more about autistic life and issues. And over here on the right, you can click on another Autistamatic film, or visit Autistamatic.com.